Relatives gathered to say goodbye to their deceased grandmother. A grandson cried that his grandmother had died. At the ceremony, they announced that it was already possible to say goodbye to the deceased. The boy asked his mom if his grandmother had gone to heaven. The woman confirmed that the grandmother had gone to rest in beautiful places. She is sure that grandma will be watching over her grandson and their whole happy family from there. The grandson asked where these beautiful places are and if there are goodies there. Mom confirmed that they are there and there are lots of them there, everything she likes. She asked her son to walk his grandmother in with a smile. The maid swept up that the girl will sleep through the important day because she warned that today Mr. Viscount returns. When the heroine woke up, she saw that it was not her granddaughter in front of her. In the form of a maid, some girl ordered to get up because Hammy will sleep through everything. The maid ordered the girl to get up and get dressed because it was already time to go to work. Hammy was very surprised by this news because she thought she was dead and did not understand what work awaited her. In an orderly tone, the maid continued to tell the girl to stop sleeping and to come right now with the guests. The maid said that there shouldn't be a speck of dust on the stairs and that she should go quickly to clean up. But Hammy asked to go easy on her. After all, her joints were no longer the same. But immediately she noticed that she had no pain, and it was as if she was now in a completely different new body. She appeared to be in a completely young girl's body. Hammy didn't realize what those chubby, tiny hands were and what was going on here. The maid ordered to get to work and hurry up so that Hammy would get down to business faster. Of course the heroine likes the character of this maid. Now that Hammy has changed, her life is off to a new start. In the palace, there were a lot of stairs, and the young maid did not know which staircase was asked to remove. So Hammy decided, since she couldn't decide on a staircase, it was time to show what she could do. Her specialty in this palace was cleaning. Hammy decided to start with the carpet. Rolling up the carpet, she quickly cleaned the stairs and decided to clean the living room. After cleaning, she came to the room and sat on the bed. Hammy pondered on what really happened and why this had happened to her in the first place. The girl thought that her life supply had run out and she had died being an elderly old lady. Hammy did not understand where she was now and who this girl was, in whom the heroine managed to be reborn. Hammy didn't know if it was real or just a dream, and was afraid that she would become old and decrepit again. After all, the 89-year-old woman was in the body of a maid. The guests were invited inside, for compared to Viscount Fredry, he looked shabby with life. Winston marveled that they had renovated their house and it was very nice and clean. The second guest confirmed and asked Mr. Winston not to be modest. The host was surprised at the delight of the guests and remarked that the mansion was over 100 years old. Even the maids refused to clean it. The gentleman also noted that the chandelier also looks like new, for it shines with cleanliness. The butler greeted Mr. Viscount. In his ear, he told him that it was the work of their new maid. The butler confessed that the other day he had taken in an orphan girl of 15, and today he saw her splendid work. The Viscount said that thanks to the butler, he was able to maintain his dignity. The Lord felt he should repay this girl. The butler listened to Mr. Viscount's request. He asked him to invite young Hammy to his study when the guests went home. After a while, the maid Hammy appeared in Mr. Viscount's study. Smiling, the girl happily asked her master if she could know why he was looking for her. Immediately, Hammy realized that she had made a mistake, and fortunately quickly realized it. The butler began to apologize to Mr. Viscount, because the young maid had not yet had time to learn elementary etiquette. Mr. Viscount understood this mishap, for she was still a little orphaned commoner. The butler remarked that he would tell the maid to have Hammy taught manners. The Viscount said that it was all right, for the butler and the maid to thank the girl because you can do without convention. Hammy went into reflection, because she does not know how she found herself in a new body after death. The mistress of this body was an orphaned maid from a commoner. The heroine wondered why, of all the professions, the girl in which she was reborn chose to be a servant. Though with that in mind, even if the heroine had gotten the body of a homeless woman, she wouldn't have refused. She really didn't want to die. A young body full of vitality after an 89-year-old body, full of common sense but sick with cancer, was just a gift from heaven. The gentleman asked what their new maid's name was. The heroine confirmed that her name was Hami, after that Mr. Viscount said he would give the girl anything she wanted as a reward for Hami making the mansion so neat and tidy. The master asked what the girl wanted. Hami asked to be given cloth and colorful threads, but no one answered her anything, and there was silence in the study. Hami thought if the lord owned a huge house, he would not spare some cloth for her. The Viscount was surprised at such a small request from his maid, and decided that he would tell the servant, and she would give it all to Hami separately. The lord also asked if Hami wanted anything else. The girl said that would be enough. The lord whispered to the butler that the maid was still very young and did not know life at all, so he asked her to increase her wages. The Viscount said that the maid would give Hami a supply of cloth and thread. The girl thanked and bowed out. The heroine certainly knows how to clean, but there is something where she is even better. Sewing, embroidery, and knitting is her element, because from childhood, her skills grew to such an advanced age that she became a real artisan. And if a person has a needle and thread, he can make unique things. In other words, there was nothing in needlework that Hami couldn't do. Now that her request has been heard, she has a chance to show her skill. The curtains and tablecloth of his mansion don't go well together, and one could start with them. The other maids came to Hami and asked why she had gone to see the Viscount. The girls asked what Hami had been rewarded with and were surprised, for the maid had not just asked for cloth and thread and had obviously asked for something else. The maids began to boast about what they would ask for as a reward from Mr. Viscount. After a while, the girls noticed what Hami had managed to embroider and remarked how talented she was. They asked why the girl had not told them about it. Hami remarked that today she had seen how the tablecloths and curtains in the house were not very suitable to replace them. The head maid burst into their room, asking what kind of screaming they were doing here at night. The maids, when they saw Josephine come into their room, immediately went back to bed and covered themselves with blankets. Josephine asked young Hami why she did not go to bed, because at this time it is time to turn off the light. But the heroine said that it was too early to go to bed. The maid doesn't understand why the maid is snapping at her. Not because Mr. Viscount himself thanked her, but that was no reason for insolence. Decided it was best to obey and go to bed. Josephine noticed that the maid was very clever, though she didn't look it. She thought that Hami was being devious somehow. The head maid began to shout at Hami, because when she taught the girl how to clean, she pretended that she was not good at it. And when Mr. Viscount arrived with guests, Hami immediately showed what she could do. The stewardess came to the room and asked what Josephine was doing here. The stewardess ordered Josephine to return to her room. She asked Hami not to pay attention to the maid, because she would get what she deserved. The woman pointed out that the lamps that are located in the servants' rooms are quite low in oil, so it would be better if the girl sleeps now. When Hami fell asleep, she saw a very bright moon in the window. The heroine decided that this light was enough for her embroidery, so she sat down at the table right next to the window. When the butler came into the main hall, he was shocked and thought that they were visited by some fairy. It was unbelievable and seemed as if it was magic. The butler remarked that the embroidery was beautiful on the curtains and looked like painting. The young people woke up early. The butler saw Hami hanging the curtains and asked. The heroine confirmed and said that her grandmother didn't like it and had to change it. But then Hami corrected herself and said that she changed it. The shocked butler asked if all the curtains in the mansion had managed to be changed. He didn't understand how the girl had managed to turn all the curtains in the house into a hand-embroidered masterpiece overnight. Hami admitted that she still sewed a tablecloth, but she wasn't sure if the butler would like it. The cloth had a red oriental dragon embroidered on it. The butler asked if it was her work. Hami was embarrassed and said it was nothing special and she shouldn't be so surprised. It was just the beginning. The heroine decided to make a gift for her girlfriends and sew the things they wanted so badly for them. The girls were modest and didn't want to take such valuable things as a gift for themselves. Hami said that if they wanted anything else, they should ask her. She said that the old woman would do anything for them. The maids wondered which old woman they were talking about. The heroine said that Hami would do anything for them, meaning she would do everything. One of the maids asked how the girl managed to create such beauty. They wondered if the maid was really able to do it all herself, because these things look better than in the store. Even the court ladies don't have anything like this. Hami pointed out that it was not that difficult for those who could sew and embroider. The girls unanimously asked if each of them could learn it. The maids wanted to be able to embroider as well as their friend Hammy. They asked if they could learn, for they wanted to do the same wonders as their new maid. They begged the heroine to teach them embroidery and knitting, even promising half of their monthly wages if she would only agree to teach them. Hammy begged them to let her go already, because they could strangle her in their arms. The heroine agreed to train her girlfriends. The maids dreamed of making hats or caps or something even more exquisite. It would be nice to learn how to make beautiful party dresses. Hammy pointed out that the friends will not learn anything if they do not decide to choose something simple, because the beginner should go from something easier to more complex tasks. The heroine suggested learning to sew and basic stitches first, such as sewing on buttons. Hammy said that the training would start tomorrow and asked her to bring her embroidery frames. Thus began the hand sewing class for beginners. The next day, the girl was already sitting and showing the others how to embroider properly. A few days later, a couple more girls joined them. In a week, the hotel had a whole crowd learning. There were rumors in the palace that these courses were very popular, and even experienced maids were listening. Young Master Winston wondered why his blanket had a grass above you, and his father's quilt had a dragon above it. The quilt, on the other hand, has a gerbera flower embroidered on it. The boy resented why only his quilt had grass embroidered on it. The young master demanded that the blanket be taken away and replaced with another one. The maid tried to convince the gentleman that this blanket was also very beautiful. But the boy said he didn't like it, and he was going to call the maid who had started it all. The young gentleman decided to tell her how to make a new one. The maid noticed that the young gentleman was just trying to skip class on that pretext. Winston said he wanted to supervise the process of making the new quilt himself. He yelled at the maid to get the maid, Hammy, who does the embroidery. The servant cried and asked if it was true that it wouldn't take long because the young master had to go to class today. Winston said that he knew that he had to take lessons, but he instructed Hammy to go to him and the servant to stop crying. The servant was told to bring Hammy right away, which would fix this misunderstanding on the blanket. The young master decided to pile up recommendations for Hammy to delay the time of the class. The girl won't be able to leave quickly. It's also a great opportunity to get to know the new maid that's been talked about so much. Young Winston was contemplating what he wanted to portray on the bedspread. At this time, a servant ran into Hammy's bedroom and notified her the young master wanted to see the girl. The maid said that they should hurry up, so she would tell everything on the way and they should go as soon as possible. She also said that you need to take a cloth with you. The heroine does not understand what is happening. The maid explained that the young master did not like the embroidery of grass on the blanket, and now he wants to control the process of creating a new one. She decided to talk about some things that she should be careful with, though, as a maid, because the young master is very difficult to communicate with. When he asks for something, you should always say yes, because otherwise there may be problems. Mr. Winston is stubborn and fickle. The maid has a way of saying yes when he gets a flick on the nose. When his nanny was alive, the young master wasn't like that. 2 years ago, the nanny had suffered a serious illness and later died. After Mrs. Viscountess died, Mr. Cassian was left in the care of his nanny. In any case, their young master is a man with a complicated and sad fate. Mr. Viscount tried to find a new nanny, but Cassian refused them under any pretext. To cope with his temper was very difficult, so they were constantly changing. The maid asks to be on the lookout for the young master. After all, it does not matter how soon the professor comes to give a lesson, because again she has to finish all the things before his arrival. Also, the maid said, just in case Hammy never mentioned Mrs. Viscountess in the presence of the young master. The girls knocked and heard permission to enter. The maid said to go to the room, for she was going to prepare for the professor's arrival. She reminded her to remember to leave the room quickly. The heroine entered the room, and there on the couch was already sitting and waiting for the little Mr. Cassian. When Hammy saw the young master, she wondered why he was so small. It was also unclear to her why she felt attracted to him. When Cassian looked at the charming Hammy, he wondered why no one had told him that the new maid was so cute. Winston noticed the shiny black short hair and the fist-sized face and delicate features, though there was a very mature aura about the youthful appearance. The girl wondered if this wasn't the time for class, and anyway she would have to leave before class started, then everything would be fine. The young master ordered the maid to embroider the quilt once more. He wants a simple but at the same time luxurious and attractive quilt. impressive and special, but not too flashy. He said about the same size or even a little smaller to start with. Hami took up sewing and embroidered a white tiger. As soon as the young master wanted to touch the fabric with his finger, the maid decided to hit him. Hami remarked that one should not stick one's hand so unceremoniously with a needle here. The maid made a point to be more tolerant and just wait. The heroine remarked that you can't touch it like that because he might suddenly hurt himself. Well, Winston said that a little prick won't kill him. Hami told him that it is unknown, for if one contracts tetanus, the young gentleman must consider the fact that there is no cure for it. You can't neglect a burn. If you get a scar, you can't get it gone. Hami handled it rather quickly and showed the young master a couple options to choose from. Winston chose the blanket with the white tiger on it. The heroine remarked that the boy liked tigers better. Young Cassian, and for the maid to address him so informally, made him angry. After all, as of late, Hami had been allowing herself to speak to him in such a manner. The heroine asked if she was allowed to this. Novingston remarked that if he allowed it, it would become permissible, but he had conditions in return. Cassian remarks that as they have a difference in position in society, he can't just give his consent to be treated that way. The boy swept his eyes over the teacher's approach. Hami jumped up, for she had promised to leave before class started. The young master did not appreciate this and ordered the maid to sit down, for he had not yet finished their conversation. The teacher entered the room. Hami noticed that the young master already had guests, so she apologized, for she had to leave. Cassian thought it was terrible manners towards him and asked the teacher to leave as quickly as he had come in. The teacher said it was lesson time, so he did so. He said that he would like to learn from the teacher how to barge in without the master's permission. Hami said the little boy has no right to talk to the teacher like that. He must respect his parents' choice, and he must study diligently, for he must become a big man in the future. When he went to bed, Cassian thought about what it was. It is an unusual maid, because she dared to hit him on the arm and even embarrass him in front of the teacher. The young master wondered why a mere apprentice maid was treated so badly by the aristocracy just because of her skillful use of a needle. That informal speech really pissed young Winston off. He wondered how Hami knew how to create a quilt so well. Cassian wanted to say that it didn't turn out very nicely, so that the maid would redo it several times. But he didn't understand why the girl was so beautiful. Winston didn't understand why they had such a maid in their house. Now Cassian has no way of forgetting her. The young master finds it a challenge. The next day in the garden, when the gardener was pruning the trees, he noticed little Mr. Cassian in the bushes. The boy asked the gardener to be quiet. The gardener asked what had brought the young gentleman here, but Cassian said that it was not important and asked the gardener to tell him where to catch insects here. And since that was the case, it would be nice to find the big ones. The gardener asked what Cassian was going to use them for, but the young master said there was one use for them. Cassian pointed out that Hami was just alone in the room. The young master said he had a gift for the maid. A surprised Hami asked why Cassian had decided to give her a gift, but Mr. Winston ordered her to open it quickly. Hami agreed to look, and when she opened the package, she saw silkworm caterpillars. The maid praised the young man because they were not so bad, and Cassian was good for catching such a large and skittish creature. In fact, he even gave her a gift. Such a kind child. Hami remarks that it's a shame that the guy keeps them locked up in such a narrow pocket. The heroine will continue to embroider, and the guy should go and let them out in the garden as soon as possible. Hami asked to come back soon. Young Mr. Winston did not understand how things had turned out this way. A little later, Winston found a spider. The next time, he brought a frog. Hami asked him to let these insects go. The young gentleman followed the maid everywhere, who interacted with him so informally and was not even afraid of him. Cassian ordered him to assign this to the other maids and go for a walk at least in the garden. The heroine said she couldn't. The butler marveled that the young master liked this maid so much. The Viscount remarked that Cassian seemed to have found a new friend. Hami, on the other hand, thought that the poor boy never knew his mother's love, or not them. So she took on the role of nanny and playmate for the younger gentleman of the Viscount family. Already the season had changed, and meanwhile the girl was teaching the other maids how to sew. They boasted that thanks to her, they were able to sew very beautiful clothes. The other servants thanked Hami for helping the younger lord. Unexpectedly, Hami became quite successful. Young Master Winston was sitting in his room and remarked that he still needed to read the history of the founding of the state. Hami remarked that if you read a lot of books, you can become an outstanding person. But Cassian considers himself an outstanding person even without reading books. The heroine, on the other hand, remarks that she has dreamed of reading books all her life, but has never had the opportunity to do so. But the young gentleman did not appreciate the dream of his new maid, and was very surprised that the maid's lifelong desire was to read books all day long. Hami confessed that she could not read. Cassian was surprised because he thought that this child could do everything, but as it turned out, she could not read. He said that if Hami was a simple person, she might not be able to read, since she was still young. Junior Winston thinks that there's no need to worry about that. After all, Hami already knows many other things and has a talent for knitting and sewing. The young gentleman remarks that he thinks it's something amazing. But the heroine kept thinking that the guy was cranky about not wanting to read in front of an illiterate person, also in front of a commoner complaining about how hard the life of an aristocrat was. Cassian jumped up and said that it was all nothing, and he was willing to teach the maid how to read. He asked to sit down beside him. The heroine was of course shy. For a commoner like Hami, not being able to read is very natural. All her life she had lived an unenviable life, and in her past life she too was an illiterate person. Illiteracy was eating the heroine from within, and then she decided to go to a school for old people to learn to read. But her eyesight was deteriorating due to overwork. The heroine did everything in a hurry. Her desires were to have a happy family, healthy loved ones, and lastly, to learn to read. The heroine wanted to read books and write without anyone's help alone. So unexpectedly for the ignorant opens the road to the world of knowledge and learning. This little boy appeared very opportunely. The young gentleman wrote the letters and symbols and said that to begin with, you have to learn these. He began to sound them out one by one, starting with the first one, and asked them to try after him. Winston said to repeat after him. Winston said to repeat after him, letter by letter. Hami wondered if it was possible to learn something new at this age. They moved on to the next line. When Hami learned the alphabet, she would be able to put it into practice. They were just about to be called for dinner. They decided to stop there, for learning should be in moderation. Cassian said that it was okay, because today he had asked to bring food to the room. But Hami scolded him, because that's not allowed, and he should eat with his family at the dinner table. Cassian agreed and decided to go to the family. The heroine thanked him for taking it upon himself to educate her. The young gentleman remarked that it wasn't worth the thanks, since he hadn't done anything special. Hami said that to her, that was what it was. Something special. Winston couldn't believe it. After all, he had only taught the maid a little bit of letters, and she had enjoyed it so much. The lad hadn't expected to hear words of gratitude. Because of that, he was glad of it, and he should teach her more. He began to ponder what books might be for easy reading, and began to think of the fairy tales he had read as a child. It was tedious for him. It happens quite often that a servant and a maid make eyes at each other. The master of the house, when hiring a roomer, indicates that love affairs are forbidden, thus breaking the couples apart. But the girls kept talking about the boys. The maids were just discussing Josephine's attitude. One of them remarked that Josephine wasn't the least bit interested in Colin. She had left the city on that vacation and inevitably met someone else, and there was a commotion about it. Josephine had met a bully in an alley, and the other had saved her. The maid remarked that it was like a romantic drama. No one knew where he disappeared to. No one said a word. All they know is that the man had black hair and strong shoulders, and of course, powerful arm muscles. Also, one of the maids heard that his clothes were quite neat. Apparently, quite an attractive man. Josephine had met them. One of the maids said that she liked blondes, because it seemed to her that men with deep blue eyes owned the world. A quarrel broke out between the girls over their tastes in guys, but one of the maids calmed them down. Then it was Hami's turn to be asked what she thought the perfect man was. The maid said that even though she was young, she must have the type of man she liked. The maids remarked that, come to think of it, young Mr. Cassian has been following Hami around lately. They noticed that Cassian wouldn't dare look down on a girl, and young Master is far from that. The girls decided that there was no way the younger Winston could like Hami. Even assuming that young Master Cassian would kneel down and propose to the girl, they should fight to the end. But Hami didn't care about this talk, for the heroine was busy learning the alphabet. The girls were in anticipation, for they wanted to know what the Lord's future lesson would be. But still, his character left much to be desired. Someone knocked on the door. Hami was asked to give some food to the pesky fortune teller that came to the mansion. It seemed that the head maid was busy. One of the maids said that although it wasn't something they should talk about, it was a bit cruel to come to such a small Viscount family, though they considered the fortune teller to be an unfortunate person who sought to satisfy hunger even if they had to do so. Since Hami had been by the young master's side lately, she hadn't heard the latest news. For now, news was spreading through the city about this fortune teller. There is nonsense about her going to every aristocratic family in search of a future wife for the crown prince. The purpose, of course, is obvious. She wants to give to hear something good and to snatch a piece of food. At first, she was treated extremely graciously, and when repeated, she was treated much more easily. It's because of scammers like this that real fortune tellers are insulted. The question remains as to what the mages are doing in the castle and why they don't catch the liar. The maids warned Hami that she must meet this man face to face, and since it is in any case a swindler, you cannot believe any of his words. Hami went to the kitchen and was kindly greeted by the cook, who offered to give her something to eat. The cook swept over to the kitchen and said that he had some stovetop cooking supplied. This was a cook who knew his business. He had taken a lot of abuse from the young gentleman in all this time. And after the heroine was in this body, the young lord had tempered his ardor, and she was constantly being thanked for it. The cook remembered what he wanted to offer the girl. He asked to try this custard that he created especially for his muffins. The custard was delicious and melted in the mouth. He had prepared enough for Hami to eat altogether, and if it wasn't enough, he was always ready to give her more. The cook believed that to be healthy, you need to eat goodies from childhood. The heroine thanked the cook for the treat and asked to give some milk and bread. The cook asked if the girl wanted something else. The maid suggested that if there was cheese and ham, it would be wonderful. Then the man asked to wait, and assumed that the young maid was going on a picnic somewhere. He asked if more fruit would be put in. Hami admitted that she was not going on a picnic, but wanted to give this one to the fortune teller. The heroine became a little uncomfortable, because it is considered to have gotten too much. She went outside and saw a figure in a black cloak. The maid noticed that the fortune teller was dressed like that, and it was very hot outside. Hami suggested a drink of milk and some bread to start with. Underneath the cloak was a rather young man. The man remarked that he will now live. The food of this house is skillfully prepared. He is truly grateful. The heroine asked to eat leisurely, for they still have plenty to eat. Everyone has to eat to survive, and this one is commonplace. The youth are very much inspired. The stranger asked if Granny would eat. He said for Nana to eat too, because it is very good. Hami asked if she had overheard, and the man did call her Granny. But the man asked not to be surprised, because from the moment he saw Hami, he immediately understood. Because he is essentially a fortune teller. The stranger was in a great mood this day, so he decided to tell a little, but only to the grandmother. In fact, the future consort of the crown prince really lives in this house. Hami noticed that the stranger says this to every house he comes to, but the mysterious man had to confess that he didn't know which house this girl lived in, so he went door to door looking for her. Today, however, he found out that this particular house, it is where the future wife of the crown prince is staying. The man explained that he was not going to interfere in the affairs of the future, so there was no need to worry. The seer said that he would not distribute to the grandmother and asked Hami not to worry. He pointed out that it wasn't really a big deal anyway. A situation like Granny's happens once every few centuries. The heroine immediately wondered what kind of situation we're talking about and what he might know about how she ended up this child. The seer said that it is not such an important matter and it is not worth worrying about, but just need to live as she wants. However, whether this is a gift or fate is unclear to the seer, as he can't see the imprints of this on her soul. Also, the stranger has implied that this is a good thing for young Hami. The heroine then inquired as to what happened to the child who lived in this body before her. The men swept up that they had been at it from the beginning, and the whole thing is that the two of them originally had identical souls, and it so happened that each lived in his own life, and now these souls have joined together. This means only that the owner of this body was originally a grandmother, and therefore only she decides how to dispose of this body. But it was not clear to the heroine why, if they have one soul for two, then all the memories of Hami's life disappeared. Then the seer asked if the girl had any memories from her youth around the age of 15. The heroine remarked that she didn't remember herself at that age. Now the now mysterious man savvy that there is the same reason here. After all, the girl lived for 15 years, and what was until that moment does not remember, and it is quite natural. This surprised the heroine, because she did not understand how it is possible to forget everything in an instant. So the man explained that the soul of the grandmother is much stronger, and this is the reason why it happened. How big a child's soul must have been at the age of 15, no one knows. In any case, there was no point in worrying. The man pointed out that time would pass, and the current image would become habitual, and asked the grandmother to think of it as an opportunity to return to her youth. If the body became young, the soul became young too. The seer remarked that his tongue was already sore from long conversations. If there were any questions for him, he asked to contact him through the mage's castle. The stranger said that now it was time for him to go, because if he stayed here any longer, he would definitely get caught. He had to hurry. Hami didn't understand what he was talking about and who the stranger was supposed to catch. He immediately explained that there was a scary person he didn't want to get caught. He thanked her for the food and said goodbye. Hami did not understand at all what was going on, for she did not know this stranger's name or face. Also, he was talking some nonsense about magic and the crown prince. But the heroine was not bothered by this, but that whatever the reality was, it did not matter now. She must dispose of someone else's life and live it. And yet, it was possible. A little later, Cassian was teaching the maid to read. They read together The Tale of the Mouse. The girl was already quite good at reading and could read sentences by syllables. Cassian told Hami not to stop and to keep reading because it was more interesting. He pointed out that the story was about a mouse named Luca fighting for life inside a cat's belly for 7 days. The young gentleman was surprised at Hami's talent for reading, for she learned almost all the letters and sounds faster than he thought. Word by word, the girl continued to read the story, and she got better each time. The young master watched Hami and noticed that the girl spoke very hesitantly with her small mouth. Usually, she always wore a maid's uniform, but for some reason, it didn't look like that today. The heroine interrupted young Cassian's musings by asking how the word in the story read. After that, Hami continued reading. The girl remarked that the story was very strange. After that, Cassian decided that if Hami did not like the tale, it was better not to read it, for it was really strange. Then they took to reading another book about the confrontation between two fruits. After a while, Cassian got embarrassed and said that that was enough for today, because the lesson and the teacher would be in the room soon, so they would continue next time. The young master didn't understand why an ordinary maid was making him so anxious. Hami couldn't believe she was hearing this from Cassian's lips. She thought that in any case, studying was important, and today he should listen carefully to the teacher's words. The boy escorted the maid from the room and let her go, saying that was enough for today. His teacher was already standing in the doorway. The young gentleman remarked that he definitely had a little more time before class started. The teacher reminded the young man that they had agreed last week to have class an hour earlier. It turned out that the young gentleman had not been listening well. Looking at the pair of them, the teacher began to suspect that the rumors in Winston Mansion were actually true. The man bowed to the lady and said that he was glad to meet her. The maid also bowed to the teacher and greeted him. This made the young gentleman slightly angry. The teacher remarked that there was nothing wrong, and he just wanted to know how true the rumors were. Hami asked what the rumors about them were in the mansion. The teacher pointed out that it was a rumor about a young master teaching a lady to read. The man kept in mind that there was no need to remind her of the rumors that the young master was devoting his attention to one thing and a maid. The teacher remarked that he was a little worried that the young lord was not going to study. After all, in that case, he would hardly be able to teach another person properly. Cassian remarked that he could hear the displeasure in his direction. The teacher said that this could not be so, and that it was only his personal point of view. The teacher asked Hami to attend the class. He felt that if the maid was present, the young master's behavior during the lesson would improve. The man asked Hami just once to sit with them in class. The girl agreed, but only if for the sake of it. Today, they would spend the lesson together. The teacher said that they would start looking at the history of the state. Hami noticed that the teacher had already told them to hurry up and take their seats. The young master was confused and didn't know what was going on. Cassian wanted to put all thoughts of Hami out of his mind because he can't learn effectively then. The young man realizes that leaving these two behind will not lead to good. A lot of maids in Winston's house have already fallen for the teacher's beauty, and Cassian can't let Hami fall in love with the young professor. Now, the teacher has noticed that the young master's behavior in class has gotten much better thanks to his behavior. Together, they set about conducting the lesson. The man began to reflect on the fact that in aristocratic society, something comes and something goes. When the time comes, there are things that rightly return. Hami remembered the maids cleaning up outside and noticed that the emperor could remove this heat with a magical cooling tool. If they could use it, they wouldn't be tormented by the heat. The heroine had definitely heard that there was talk of magic in this world. She learned this from a pseudo-guesser, but it turned out to be true. In her past life, the heroine was not surprised by the internet or smartphones. Those small devices could take photos, listen to music, and even make calls, perhaps even better. But right now, more important than magic was this heat. A little later, Hami came to the kitchen to the cook and asked to make a drink of cinnamon and ginger with boiled honey and sugar. After all, if you drink it chilled, it helps to bear the heat. The cook began to make the cocktail and asked if Hami was sure it was the right ingredients, for he had gotten them, the maid said. The girl suggested that it would be nice to add more pine nuts and dried persimmons to this. She decided to try cooking with that for starters. The cook remarked that it was good if Hami asked for it, for he would do anything for her. The man decided to take charge of the cooking and told her to use whatever was necessary. The cook said that if Hami needed anything else, she should ask him. Together they finished just as they were making the cocktail. The heroine noted that it was left to add fire and leave it to simmer for 1 hour, and then they would finish it. When the cocktail cooked gore that the cook looks very tired. The man apologized, for he had just dozed off. But the maid said that it did not matter at all and asked if the cook wanted to taste the finished cocktail. The man agreed to try it and noticed that the drink was very similar to coffee, but it was drunk not from a cup, but from a bowl. The cook tasted the drink and felt as if he was in a refreshing meadow. The drink was neither bitter nor sweet and had a very juicy flavor. The man said that it was insanely delicious and really unimaginable. The cook praised the drink and its simplicity for a long time. After all, the preparation process didn't look complicated and the flavor was achieved with ordinary ingredients. The cook insisted that it was necessary for tonight's dinner, for Mr. Viscount should certainly like it, and perhaps she would even be rewarded for it. Hami said that she should not be rewarded for it because she was already happy that the drink was to the chef's liking. She asked to pour everything into glass bottles and leave them in the shade so she could drink the cocktail chilled. The man said he would do that. Hami asked to give some to the guys who work here as well. The man commented that the heat makes everyone look powerless, so they will definitely like the drink. This cocktail can be made again, so it's safe to dispose of it. But the maid admitted that she knows another drink that is also not very difficult to prepare, and it does not need a lot of expensive ingredients. After that, the Winston house became a hurricane of cocktails. The people of the house seemed to be all trying new drinks. The maids were talking about what delicious cocktails their maid had come up with. Thanks to this gentleman, the Viscount thanked Hami. Everyone wondered how the girl knew about these refreshing drinks. Even the teacher, after tasting this marvelous drink last time, today brought the novels of gratitude for Hami to read. The teacher confessed that this was a book he read when he was in the academy, so he hoped that the novel would please the maid very much. The modest girl said that it was not worth a thank you, but the teacher pointed out that this is just a small token of appreciation, and this is not just a book, but a masterpiece of the classics. He explained that the book tells the story of a chase that takes place in a wasteland outside the state. The text could be like a martial arts textbook. Hami said that what she gave the professor was not as meaningful as his gift. The man took note of the girl's modesty and said she was more skilled than rumored. But the heroine thought it was she who should thank the teacher for enjoying the drink. The teacher remarked that he was glad to have someone like Hammy by his student's side. The man remarked something about the way the maid appeared in class. He had a hard time creating the right atmosphere for the young master to listen. The young master listened to what the professor and the maid were talking about and came to the conclusion that Hammy liked smart and handsome men. The lad was a little uneasy and worried that the professor liked Hammy. Mr. Winston picked up on the fact that in doing so, Hammy looked like a little kid in the teacher's eyes, which meant it could be unrequited love. Cassian ventured into their conversation and stated that he too had a lot of books. If you look at it that way, he didn't need them and was ready to throw them away. It was a rather pathetic attempt to draw attention to himself. The boy declared that it would be better to give them to Hammy and he would bring those books right away. The teacher confided to the maid that his wife was very happy to taste the drink, and the book was suggested to be given by her too. The heroine asked him to convey his thanks to his wife. The two stood and reasoned about the usefulness of ginger in the drink. The girl promised the teacher to make drinks more often to treat him and his wife. Hammy was a little worried about the teacher's pregnant wife, so she decided to create some clothes for the baby today. On this beautiful day, Hammy decided to walk around the market to buy some new fabrics from a store. She couldn't find this store in any way and just wandered around the market. But then, the girl noticed paper airplanes flying overhead. Hammy caught one of them and saw that on it, something written. The girl unfolded the sheet. It said that someone had read all the drafts of the principles of magic that were sent to him last time. As far as the conclusion was concerned, it was unclear who had written it. We should have caught them and killed them. They didn't even deserve to eat. Hammy didn't understand what it all meant. There are many stalemates, but the peaceful part of magic is more important. The nucleation stage of the reductions to 8 stages is ineffective. That's why they raised it to 12 stages again. He didn't know about the other one, but pulling these parts out, the whole picture doesn't work. Looks like someone was using Rombride's theory. Hammy's point is that the writing looks like a cipher. This magic is not change magic, but more like developmental magic. That seems to explain the time difference of the applied density of the object in particular magic and stone. And yet on this day he escaped so well that he didn't even turn a deaf ear when he said not to look for him. In any case, one should not engage in worthless pursuits, because it too affects the integrity of the soul and the future. The addressee asked to keep a good eye on him alone, and don't even think of using it on him. For some reason, Hammy felt the anger of the person who wrote this letter. It looked like the sender's name was written there. Whichever way you looked at it, this letter was definitely meant for Hammy. The heroine decided to start by folding it again. The girl launched the airplane back into the sky and realized that there are still things in this world that can surprise. Just as the heroine reached the fabric store, she ordered fabric for new clothes for the teacher's baby, and now the goodies requested by the maids will not keep you waiting. Also, Hammy remembered that Cassian likes tigers, so she bought a tiger statue to give to the young master. When the heroine handed the young master the gift, he was shocked that the girl actually bought it for him. Hammy had implied that it was in gratitude for the literacy training and books he had given her. The maid saw this tiger and thought that Cassian might like it. The boy admitted that he had not counted on the gift. He thanked the girl. If the maid had known that Mr. Winston would like the figurine so much, she would have thought of it earlier. Cassian pondered where to put the figurine. He seemed to really like it. Lesson was about to start soon. The maid decided to leave to do some housework. When Hammy went out, she began to ponder whether all that stuff she bought was enough. At this time, the teacher was lecturing the young master. The teacher noticed Hammy enter the room because he asked her to come and sit next to them. Young Master Winston insisted that Hammy sit next to him. The professor told him that this was the norm now, but at that time there was a lot of negative reaction. After all, high-status aristocrats did not want their influence divided. For future generations, it was the right decision and it was appreciated. Especially in the case of cruelty, if not for the past ruler, the chain of passing on the traditions of magic that goes from generation to generation. Hammy sat in thought, for she had the impression that the past ruler was an outstanding person. In their divine land, only a few people possessed life-giving enchanting magic. On the other hand, in the field of magic, if one counted, there were over 500 kinds of magic. the teacher continued to talk about mages and the immediate castle of mages. Then, Hammy remembered the conversation with the fortune teller. She now understood what kind of place it was when she heard the lecture from the professor. The heroine realized that this is clearly not the place that can be found guided by a single interest. The teacher had noticed that the young gentleman's manners had improved in class. Cassian said that they had always been like that. After all, the teacher had shown the young master what erudition was. Of course, this sped up the passing of the material, so the young master could now be free. Cassian admitted that he too was thinking of finishing quickly and leaving. The teacher asked if young Winston was overworked, but the boy denied it. In that case, starting with the next class, the teacher would try to let him go early. Soon they would be studying international affairs. The teacher offered to celebrate today's lesson. The maid gladly accepted the professor's offer, which made the young master a little wary. Hami said that she had prepared a cocktail and the necessary things she had talked about before. The man thanked the girl. To this, the professor said that he could not accept these gifts because he had nothing to repay. He asked the maid to ask for something in return. But Hami confesses that she doesn't need anything because the professor has already given her a book before. The teacher thinks that this is not enough, so he wants to invite Hami to his house. Cassian became jealous of the maid again with his teacher. He declared loudly to the whole room that this should not be allowed. The young master reasoned that Hami was a maid of the Winston family, and she could not do this without her master's consent. Cassian set conditions. If the maid was going to go to the professor's dinner, he would go with her. Otherwise, Mr. Winston forbids her to do so. The teacher stated that he wanted them to meet his family. This made the young gentleman even more apprehensive. He didn't understand why or for what reason this was happening, and worried that Hami would become the bride of this family in the future. The teacher invited them to lunch today. At this, they said goodbye until the meeting. Together with Hami, they went to visit the professor. Cassian didn't like the girl's outfit. He noticed that the maids wore the same dress all weekend. The girl thought the young master forbade it. But young Winston admitted that it is not so simple. He has never once seen her in other clothes. The other maids are the same, but they probably have at least one set of casual clothes. Cassian said that when they return, they will buy some clothes for her. After all, Hami should have clothes for going out too. If she needed anything besides that, they would buy it together. The girl remarked that she had seen a clothing store in the heel last time. Cassian said they wouldn't linger at the professor's place and would head straight on. The professor met them in the courtyard and asked if there were any problems while they were getting here. After that, the professor said that he would take them to the guest room. The professor's wife was already waiting for them in the living room. The teacher introduced the wife and said that her name was Lisa. It was a pleasure for the wife to meet these two, as she had heard quite a bit about them. Cassian was very surprised, for he didn't know that the teacher was married. The boy was glad that the teacher already had love in him, but he didn't understand why he was so relieved by this news. Lisa admitted that she was pleasantly surprised at the baby clothes. His wife remarked that it was outstanding craftsmanship and looked like a work of art that was a shame to use. The maid said she was being overpraised and there was nothing special about it. Next time she promises to create more because she asks to use it with pleasure. Lisa thinks that she can't accept such a valuable thing if she doesn't give anything in return. But Hami continued to discourage, because it is enough for her that the teacher allows her to attend his lessons. Besides, the maid had already received the book from him last time. The servant of the Blake house notified the mistress that the food was ready. Lisa realized that she had forgotten that she had invited the guests and was still talking. Mistress called everyone to the table. Cassian noticed that Master Blake was a very caring husband. Together, they went into the dining room of Blake's house and sat down. Lisa confessed that because she was pregnant, her mother sent her food almost every day. The woman was ashamed to talk about it, but she pointed out that her mother's cook was very skillful, and the guests should definitely enjoy the food. Thanks to this, Professor Blake always pisses. His wife hardly eats anything due to severe toxemia. Lisa savvy that it is when her husband is fed up, and in this one was able to drink that wonderful drink that Hami gave. The professor told her that his wife is the daughter of a famous aristocrat family. Since she had married him, she had suffered a lot. Lisa scolded Professor Blake, for they had agreed not to talk about it. Young Mr. Winston heard the familiar name of the famous Earl in their conversation. He confessed that it was so, and that it was that family. After all, Lisa's family is one of the few families that is very famous in the state, especially well known in rumored social circles. Lisa's mother. A daughter in such a family was supposed to marry a marquis or a prince. However, the girl who occupies such a position chose Professor Blake. Just as Cassian thought, a man should be smart and handsome, and position is not so important. Close up, and it's time for them to call it a day. Professor Blake said he would like to give the youths gifts to commemorate the day. The teacher remarked that they were modest, but asked to accept them nonetheless. Hami immediately began to refuse, for it was not nice of them. They had already been treated to a fine meal, and such gifts were unnecessary. Lisa begged to accept them, for she wasn't wearing them anyway. Then Professor Blake offered to exchange these gifts, in exchange for the maid to knit more things for the child. To this, Hami agreed. The Blake family saw the young gentleman and his maid off. Hami admitted that it had been very interesting, but it was time for them to go. Cassian thought it wouldn't be right to drive to the store today. The girl asked the cabman to go to the store. Young Mr. Winston said he wasn't sure if they would get there in time, but the maid said it was all right, and they would make it in time. They drove to the women's clothing salon. The owner of the salon sat and pondered that it would be better to locate the store near the goddess's knees. And so she created an expensive brand in vain, because of the death of Viscount's wife, women's clothes are rarely bought from her. It was still early, but the hostess was thinking of closing the salon. A young Mr. Winston arrived at the salon with his maid. The landlady thought it was a useless day, for it was only 2 children. She asked if they were looking for anything in particular, or just looking around. Cassian said they had come to look for clothes for Hami. The hostess immediately noticed that the girl had black hair and fair skin. She was very pretty, and the clothes should match the girl's appearance. The woman also noticed that they could not find clothes for children in their store. The maid offered to take measurements and prepare suitable clothes for Hami in the future, but the maid insisted that the woman just show what they had now. The woman warned that the sizes wouldn't fit her. The heroine said she could fix it herself because it was fine. This surprised the salesman a little and gave her a new idea, because you can fix clothes that are out of fashion instead of throwing them away. In this way, you can sell the old clothes of aristocrats after remaking them for commoners. In that case, the store wouldn't have to close. The salesman showed a blue dress that Hami immediately liked. The woman said she would give it away for free. Suddenly, the store owner cried and confessed that thanks to Hami, she had realized something she had missed. She tried to calm down. Young Mr. Winston said that he didn't need any discounts. If it was about price, they had the money. The maid didn't understand why the young master should pay for her clothes. Cassian said from a position of authority that it would be right for him to pay for the clothes. After all, Hami is a maid who belongs to the Winston family. He pointed out that it was originally a tradition for aristocrats to give young maids gifts. In return, the maid was silent. Cassian said that the store's opening time had already come to an end, so they should go back. Hami was about to leave, but the shopkeeper asked her to stay, because there was something she wanted to know. She asked if she was a maid in the Winston family, and if her name was Hami. The girl confirmed the guess of the owner of the women's clothing salon. The saleswoman had already heard about the maid in the Winston mansion. She wished them a good journey and thanked them for their visit. In the carriage, the two sat in complete silence, and Cassian didn't realize when it started. He could not directly look his maid in the eye. Hami said that getting out to visit in store sometimes is great, because thanks to the young master even came in a carriage. Cassian had also bought her some clothes. Hami expressed her excessive gratitude. But that wasn't what bothered the young master. In his chest, his heart was really pounding. With every passing moment, his feelings for Hami were getting stronger. The guy said that this was a small matter, and he could make a better and more expensive gift next time. It was worth it just to look at Hami, and the young master has a smile on his face. The maid noticed that the young master was having fun too. She saw the same airplane again. The maid began to wonder if that airplane would come to her again. Cassian asked if there was something outside the window. The girl admitted that there was a paper airplane in the sky. She pointed her finger at the airplane glowing a bright blue color high in the sky. The young gentleman said he couldn't see anything. After that, the maid realized that most likely only she could see it. The girl did not understand why only she could see the airplane. The airplane flew straight to the Winston mansion. Hami saw it go through the wall and get inside. The next morning, when the maid was cleaning the yard, she whispered to herself, no one knows about this paper airplane. Even Blake's teacher was hearing about it for the first time. The maid began to wonder what she might have been imagining. The mother decided to visit her daughter, and the daughter showed the things that Hami had knitted. The daughter confessed that a noble lady she knew had done it. Lisa confessed that this girl does amazing things. The mother remarked that these robes were truly the work of a master craftswoman. She recognized that Lisa's acquaintance was making really beautiful things. The Countess began to worry that this craftswoman might become known in the secular society and there might be unrest. After all, such craftswomen are very rare in their country. Lisa agreed with her mother and told her that she would show her even more amazing things. Her daughter asked to come over to her. Lisa took her mom's hand and led her to another room. It was a bedroom. Thanks to Hami, the interior of the room had changed a lot. Lisa confessed that it would not be good if only she knew about such an artificial craftsmanship. The daughter asked her mother to tell the socialite about Hami. She told her that she was a maid in the Winston house. The mother was surprised, but the daughter reassured her and said that Hami was only 15 years old. The Countess remarked that Mr. Viscount's wife had died, but it had been a long time ago. The mother remarked that if the mistress was alive, surely everyone would have known about such a nugget by now. The Viscountess would not keep such a talented child quiet in her mansion. Lisa explained that that was why she had to ask her mother for such a thing. The Countess then said that there would be a tea party this weekend, and she needed to take at least a handkerchief to show off Hami's skills. Lisa said she would then ask to inform Mr. Viscount in advance, and she would tell Hami herself in person. Her mother remarked that her daughter looked quite happy and seemed to be worried for nothing. The Countess could not refuse Lisa's request and asked her not to worry. Soon, Hami learned of Lisa's request to make a handkerchief for the tea party and made one. Mr. Viscount admitted that the situation obliges to do so because there are a lot of aristocrats want to see the master. The butler will tell you all about it. 2 days ago, there was a tea party at which the Countess showed the handkerchief that Hami had made. At that time, the ladies of high rank remarked that the woman had a skillful piece. The Countess said it wasn't an artificial thing, just a handkerchief. Everyone took it as a joke. After all, though the ladies don't know much about artificial things, think that this camellia flower pattern is not that common. The Countess had sufficiently piqued the aristocracy's curiosity. When the rumors spread and peak, then Hami will debut at the speed of a comet. If she does, she will get attention and be able to live as a superb designer. One girl confessed that she had already seen things similar to a handkerchief. In fact, while exchanging small things with Viscount, she had seen such a thing in their house. It was last month when the lady was inspecting Viscount's house and saw a similar pattern on the curtains in his house. The lady admitted that there were even patterns of tigers and dragons. The lady also boasted that she had tasted one very peculiar drink, and it was the first time she had ever tasted such drinks. These drinks were made by one of the Viscount's maids. The lady then asked if the lady had really received this handkerchief from that maid who works at Winston Mansion. The Countess admitted that she had. After that, the ladies started talking that they would also like to meet her if they had the chance. The Countess became a little nervous, for the attention to Hami had turned to excess due to curiosity. So said the butler to the maid, "Mr. Viscount thinks that there shouldn't be too many people present, and there will probably only be a couple of people. So when the guests arrive, he thinks it would be a good idea to treat them to tea and strike up a conversation." Hami realized that it would be enough for her to greet the guests and serve them tea. Hami asked to trust her. On the day of the tea party, the Viscount's house was not an emergency, but close to it. Everyone in the house was preparing for the tea party. The last tea party at the Viscount's had already been 7 years ago, when the Viscount's wife was still alive. If the Countess didn't help, there would be great shame. At this very moment, Hami was in the kitchen preparing for the tea party. Cassian came into her kitchen and said that he had heard the talk. The young master had already heard that there would be a tea party today. He asked the girl not to worry. Mr. Winston Jr. said not to force herself. If it was too much for her, she could stop. His father sent him to tell her to tell Hami not to overexert herself. The maid said that everything was fine and there was no reason to worry. Hami noticed that the guy had come just in time and offered to try the cookies. She wondered what they tasted like. The cookies were delicious and melted in her mouth. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it was time for tea. The butler began to say what guests had arrived at the mansion. The Viscount began to wonder why so many ladies had arrived for tea. The master of the house thanked the ladies for their visit to such an unremarkable place. Then the master decided to show the ladies in, and there were many curtains with beautiful embroidered patterns. The ladies were very much surprised at this. To them, the robot Hami was an art. After all, when they saw this thing with their own eyes, they wanted to look even more at the maid who embroidered this beauty. One lady asked where that maid was that survives these wonderful things and asked her to introduce her to them. About 30 ladies came to visit the Winstons. Hami entered their room to deliver the food. Everyone started saying among themselves that this was probably the same girl mastermind. Seeing the cookies, the aristocrats thought they looked like some kind of tree stumps. Well, Hami explained that this kind of cookie was sticky and gooey. It was very tasty, so she offered the ladies a taste. One of the ladies dared to try it and declared that it was insanely delicious, encouraging everyone to try the dish. One of the gentlemen asked the master of the house if they had those wonderful drinks. The Viscount remarked that they had prepared this one separately and would be bringing it soon. This, what the lady was talking about last time, was this drink. It was hard to believe that this interior was actually made by a young maid. They did not understand how one could possess such skill at such a young age until one saw such a thing. It was very hard to believe. The Countess suggested that if there was any doubt, they could demonstrate the skill right here and now. She stated that she had prepared the cloth and needle and thread to see it in person. The ladies suggested that would be fine, and it was a good way to assure themselves of the young maid's skill. Hami quickly agreed to this and asked which one to see. Someone suggested making an uncomplicated flower. But Hami reads that it is too easy, and very quickly came out flowers on a piece of cloth. And for her young age, the ladies had a wrong opinion about the skills, but the maid completely met all expectations. The lady was very ashamed that she didn't believe in the heroine's abilities. One lady asked Hami for this cloth. Another lady also wanted to buy this cloth. They started arguing and quarreling and had a straight bargaining in the living room. The heroine, on the other hand, suggested that everyone should create a similar thing. Hami offered the ladies to teach them because it is easier than they think, so they are very easy to learn it. The noblewomen did want to learn it, but for some, learning from a maid was unacceptable. One of the girls said it was ridiculous that aristocrats were taught by a maid. The Countess pointed out that there is an old saying that says that a wise man gets his wisdom from a child of the street, and it was the truth of life, for everyone can learn something new. This girl is a talented kid. It's about the lady's inability to learn, not her unwillingness to learn from someone below her rank. The Countess's implication is that she really wants to learn, because that makes sense. Even so, she would like to give a gift to her grandson who is about to be born. The Countess said that for those who do not want to learn, she suggests that they go home. The woman concluded that all the guests would simply get tired of waiting. But many ladies also wanted to learn knitting. One of the ladies said that one should not miss such a valuable opportunity and also wanted to make on her own shawl as a gift for her husband. Hami gathered the noble women around her and showed them that first they had to learn the very basis. There were many elements to learn. She showed them the straight stitch, for starters. It could be used to create shapes such as a triangle and a square. She spent a long time showing them how to embroider properly. The aristocrats were dumbfounded by the new information that they had learned from a simple maid. Hami said that it would be very difficult at first, so she told them to draw a line and follow it. After embroidering, you can wash the piece and the line will be erased. There will be no problem. The guests were very busy embroidering and did not even notice how the time flew by. Hami remarked that it was no good. The maid asked her girlfriends to help the aristocrats with learning to knit. The maids didn't really want to do it, for they were not comfortable telling and teaching something to ladies from high society. One of them was embarrassed that Hami told the maids to teach them. After all, the heroine is a maid herself. The lady asked the maids to untangle a thread that had become tangled when she was knitting. The maid began to tell the lady that she was holding the needle incorrectly, for she should hold the yarn so that it would not become tangled. All in all, the aristocracy enjoyed the tea party very much, and they thanked Mr. Viscount for making a feast for them. The gentleman remarked that he was very glad to be honored by their presence. The ladies, as they went home, asked to be sure to invite them next time. The ladies asked him to tell Hami that they were leaving. The Viscount realized that thanks to the new maid, the tea party was a success. After this event, all of the Viscount's employees began to work in an even better environment. Their menu became more varied, and seasonal fruits were provided for dessert. Their pay also changed. However, the most important change was the appearance of official days off. Hami went outside a wonderful day. She saw the paper airplane in the sky again. The girl noticed that it was flying in the same direction as usual. Hami understands the difference because, unlike today, the pure green color of the growing plants is everywhere. The girl turned to the flying paper airplane and suggested that it go in the same direction. It was a surprising thing to her, for as she recalled, it went through the roof of the residence. However, as she recalled, there was no ghost or smoke then. The paper airplane flew away. The girl wondered where it had gone. A little farther away stood a figure in a black cloak. It was the same man who had come for food at their Winston mansion. The stranger greeted Nana and said that they had met again. Hami realized that the owner of that paper airplane was the young man in the cloak. The maid explained what it was about and that she was seeing his paper products. The stranger was surprised because no one can see the paper airplane. Hami said that other people could not see it. The stranger then asked the grandmother to follow him. Instead of explaining in words, he decided to show everything, because it would be faster that way. The young man said it was quite important. He asked if Granny knew that magic existed in this world. Hami admitted that of course she knew, but did not quite understand its essence. They walked deep into the forest. Familiarity said they had come to. It was a clear and wide field that would be perfect for taking lunch here and having a picnic. The seer interrupted the girl and asked her to wait. He said to take another step to see. I from the bushes saw the mage's tower. The stranger said it was a magical castle. Then the girl asked not if this is where the wizards dwell. The seer confirmed this and said that the grandmother was also a wizard. The government admitted that he too is a wizard and asked to go to the castle first and find out the belonging of the granny. After that, he is ready to explain everything. The man grabbed the girl's hand and asked her to hold on tight. He asked if Hami could see the oak tree with white roots. He said that if you go into the inside of the tree, you can see the magic, but if you come out, you can't. If there is a need to come here in the future, the maid can use this indicator. Granny didn't believe that she was really a sorceress, but the seer confirmed it. However, the maid is completely unable to do magic and all. He didn't know about it, but the fact that the girl sees Alfie's letter can only mean that Granny's magic power isn't that small. Hami was embarrassed, for she thinks she saw the letter by accident. The girl apologized for reading the letter without permission. This surprised the seer, as he did not think that the maid could read the contents of the letter. The stranger noticed that even wizards with a sufficient level of magic could not read it. He is not worried about it as there is nothing particularly important in there. To the stranger, Mr. Alfie is indeed an amazing person. Of course, the seer is not strong in magic, but even with him they have similarities. Alfie is a very smart kid because he possesses a tolerable theoretical knowledge base. He uses a type of insightful magic. But it has one characteristic flaw. They went inside and the seer said to follow him. For a maid, everything was quite bizarre. It was a bit of a strange building, and it could actually collapse at any moment. Hami said that they had better move out of here soon. Familiar said that things were much more interesting here, and it was possible, in case of destruction, to ask the mages to use restoration magic. However, this would also require handiwork. Magic is not an all-powerful tool. The seer pointed out that the fee for being able to use a restoration mage is very high, yes, and in general it is quite a rare type of wizard. The young man explained that there are several types of mages, over 500 varieties of sorcery directions. There are those who are more, and also there are specializations of wizards. Hami wondered what type of wizard the stranger was directly related to. If there are so many, then he must belong to some unique type. He admitted that he is of the ordinary type, and his task is to read and show the past or future. The girl thinks that reading the past or future is a very amazing ability. But the seer said that it is a very common type. Fortune tellers and seers belong to this type. They finally came to a large magical door and wanted to try to enter it. The stranger said that the girl should go in by herself. because if they went in together, Hami's magic would mix with his, and they wouldn't be able to accurately determine the type of magic the maid had. The magic sphere began to shine more and more strongly, emitting different waves. The stranger asked to try putting one hand on top of that sphere. He instructed Hami to think she was submerged in water and asked her to hold her breath for a while. After a second, the maid was pulled inside this sphere. But it was over very quickly. The stranger asked if Hami was not too scared, because usually touching the sphere with her hand is enough. The girl asked if it was over. The seer remarked that yes, and here they are identifying the features and distinctive traits of the grandmother. Now they can identify the magic of the grandmother. The seer swept that the magic of the granny sends out a silver color. Then Hami asked if the magic has its own color. Then the stranger said that Hami had seen Alfie's letters and said that they had different paper colors. The girl remembered seeing purple and blue paper airplanes. The seer pointed out that even when the mages are separated, the result and analysis may not come out right away. The stranger asked the grandmother not to tell anyone about where she had gone and what she had seen. The stranger said that they will send a letter to Nana when the result of the magic analysis is ready. When Hami receives the letter, she must set the magic lock, and she can also come here even if she is just bored. Everyone is free to come here whenever they want, even though it is called a magic castle, but only it stays here for a long time. Hami asked why the seer was alone here and where the others had gone. The stranger explained that everyone had gone to earn money, each on his own demand. Is the master of the castle cannot be empty? The stranger introduced himself that his name was Kikos Heigl, and he was a representative of the mages. Then the heroine also introduced herself that her name is Hami, and she is a maid of the estate of Mr. Viscount Winston. When the girl stepped outside, she was sure that she had spent quite a long time inside the castle of the mages. It felt like she had entered another world. She was also glad that she could do that now too. Come to think of it, reading about mages as a child, she had always dreamed of becoming a wizard. And then Hami noticed a firefox. If you looked closely, this leaf looked like Cassian. It was a boy, and the character was very similar. Hami said to approach him. The girl noticed the paper airplanes in the sky again. They had just parted with kicks, and he had already managed to send a letter. The maid intercepted the letter, and it said that Kikos had interesting news for Alfie. The maid said that the airplane should fly to its master, and she didn't understand why it kept coming to her. But the girl was glad that at least she saw a cute fox. The fox suddenly disappeared somewhere. Hami was a little upset and did not understand where the fox had gone. She wanted to meet again. A couple of days later, the girl decided to come here again. Her plane arrived at dawn, and she asked the maids to replace her that day. Thanks to her girlfriends, Hami was able to change her schedule and get out easily, but the whole way without the airplane was very boring. She walked along the path alone. The fox was already waiting for the girl. Hami was glad the fox had met her again. This time, the fox welcomed her and rubbed against the maid's leg. As Hami talked to Cassian, she remembered the fire fox she had met when she went outside. She sat and embroidered the fox on the cloth. Cassian asked if it was the fox she was embroidering. The young gentleman asked to be careful with it because if the maid came closer, strange things might happen. It was an unusual fox. Hami remembers this conversation. The maid thought that she could not continue to call the animal just a fox because it was impolite, so she decided to give it a name. She then decided to name the firefox and started to pick a name, but the foxy fox didn't like anything. They reached an oak tree with white roots, and Hami said she had to go. The fox climbed out on a tree branch and fell asleep. The girl crossed over not by the roots and found herself at the castle of the mages. The door was open. Kikos was already waiting for her. He was very happy to see them because something really serious had happened. Mr. Kikos said that usually they had to wait for several months, but somehow the result came in less than 4 days. Mr. Kikos confessed that a type of granny magic is a type of creature. The seer confessed that he has seen creature mages in his life and they can die. There is no way he can believe it. Hami asked Kikos to gather himself and explain more precisely what creature type means. He explained that a creature is a type of magic that allows you to create things in that didn't exist before. It is the rarest type of mage in all of history that the legends speak of. Kikos asked Hami if she had something she really enjoyed creating. The girl admitted that she liked to create anything she could think of. These were not things that Hami had invented. These things were invented by others, and the maid just repeated them. The girl listed that it involved embroidery, knitting, and something like cooking. But the seer asked to explain more specifically. The maid pulled out a handkerchief that had recently come out and showed it to Kikos. About cooking food, the girl explained that she knew how to make delicious drinks. The seer remarked that he had never seen such embroidery since he was born, and the food the grandmother spoke of, he had never heard of at all. None of this had happened before, and this was the first time Granny had created this, so the type of creation was perfectly suitable for her. But Hami was in denial, because all these things were already there originally, and they were created by other people. Granny is talking about another world now, and their worlds are different, and in that world Granny wasn't a mage. In any case, there states such things never existed. Hami may be a creator type of wizard. Is it any wonder she can do such things? But Kiko-san says that it doesn't matter, because it's still creating something. Plus, it's a big problem since there's no record of this type of magic. Now, Kikos has no idea where to start learning. He asked for this scroll to start with. It was about the basic theory of magic for beginner wizards. Kikos said that Granny lacked the basics of magic and had a lot to learn. Then Hami wondered if everything she had worked so hard to create was still just creation magic.